Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, we sit down to talk about a multi-agency public interaction event designed to bring positive law enforcement interaction to ill children and their families at the Loma University Children's Hospital. To discuss the Loma Children's Hospital Cops for Kids fly-in, we get to talk to Doug Brimmer from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Ian Crocker from the Riverside Police Department in California. Doug Brimmer has served the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department for over 28 years. His passion for law enforcement began early as he was raised in a military, law enforcement, and aviation family. Following the historic footsteps of his father, Vic Brimmer, Doug passionately pursued the same law enforcement and aviation career as his father. After serving 2 years in the jail system and 8 years of patrol, he was assigned to Sheriff's Aviation in 2011. While in aviation, he flew for 2 years as a TFO, 8 years as a patrol helicopter pilot, and 2 years as a rescue helicopter pilot. He's conducted well over 75 live hoist rescue missions throughout San Bernardino County. While in aviation, he also serves as a recruitment team member for the department, a coordinator for the Aero Squadron, and volunteers on the boards for both the Sheriff's Historical Society and the California Law Enforcement Historical Society. Ian Crocker was raised in Redlands, California. In 2008, Ian graduated with a bachelor's degree from Cal State San Bernardino. While in college, Ian also began working in mental health programs for at-risk youth. In 2012, Ian took the first step in pursuing his dream job in law enforcement. He entered the Extended Academy at San Bernardino Valley College while working full-time during the day. The Extended Academy took a year to complete. He received his basic post certificate in August of 2013 and was hired by the Riverside Police Department in October of 2013. Ian's worked patrol. He was selected as a school resource officer and was also selected to be a collateral member of their SWAT sniper team. In 2020, Ian was selected as a tactical flight officer briefly before testing, interviewing, and being selected as a pilot. Thank you to our sponsors, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, Summit Aviation, and Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like you're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast. I'm your host today, Jack Shanley. With me is the creator of the Hangar Z podcast, Mr. John Gray. Hello, John.
Hello, Jack.
We have a couple of important guests today to talk about a very unique event. And I know, John, you want to touch on that right off the bat, kind of fill us in on where we're going today.
Yeah, so I'm working for Ontario PD. Let me back up. I'm sick today, so you guys are going to hear a squeaky voice. Anybody who's listening is going to hear a squeaky voice through the whole podcast. So Jack's graciously stepped up to the plate to take over this interview. But this is an interview that I've wanted to have for a long time. Working for Ontario PD, we had the opportunity to go to the Loma Children's Hospital, the fly-in, and this is something that happens every year. So I'm excited to talk to Ian and Doug, and Ian's kind of the liaison and spearheading this whole thing to get the history and some more details from this. But what's really cool is all the agencies that are participating fly into San Bernardino County Sheriff's facility. We all break bread together there, do a pre-brief. Then everyone takes off from their facility, flies over to Loma Linda, and lands outside of the hospital. Once everybody lands, a bunch of SWAT equipment shows up, a bunch of other police personnel, and you get to greet kids that are in the hospital that are ill, for the ones that are mobile. And then there's these teams that break up and go into the hospital and deliver toys to children that aren't able to get out of their beds and come out and see the helicopters. So you get to greet a really broad array of different kids that are sick. And it was a really, really impactful thing for me to be a part of. I think it was probably, of all the things I've done in law enforcement, as far as PR work and impactful work, that was probably the most impactful thing I've ever done. So I was always really excited to be a part of that. And this year I was hoping to go and represent the Hangar Z podcast and Vertical Magazine to highlight its importance. And I wasn't able to make it this year, but I am excited to talk to you guys about it. But to me, this is one of those things that it changes lives. It motivates these kids to keep fighting, and it changes their lives in a lot of ways that, we all talk about in the podcast, these impactful moments we've had. you met somebody who was a pilot, you sat in a helicopter that was on display somewhere, whether it was an air show or a static display like this, and they later on became pilots, and so what you guys are doing there is positive in so many ways. That's why I wanted to talk about it. And hopefully as this thing progresses, other agencies pick up on the idea and are able to spread this PR type event throughout the country and in the world, really. By saying it's a PR event, I think it's kind of shortchanging what it is, because again, it's more than that. It's just a really impactful event. So that's why I wanted to bring you guys in to talk about that. And of course, to profile your guys' career as well. So that's kind of my short description of the fly-in.
Who we brought here today is from Riverside Police Department, Ian Crocker. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Jack. John, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're glad to have you. And Doug Brimmer from San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, Aviation. Welcome, Doug.
Welcome. Thank you, guys.
It's great to have both of you.
Doug's one of those guys. You could be like the most obscure town in the furthest part in the country, and someone would be like, "Oh, Doug Brimmer?" Like, everybody knows Doug Brimmer somehow. I don't know how you know so many people, Doug, but everyone knows you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Just like Keith Bacon. It's Doug Brimmer, Keith Bacon, 6 degrees, whatever it is. Well, we're going to start with drink of the day. Doug, you want to start with your drink of the day for the podcast today?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed, but this came from my late lunch. So I got myself a Baker's root beer.
There's nothing to be embarrassed about there. Oh my gosh. That's great. Ian?
Yeah, I'm well, not quite with Doug, but I just have my tumbler of water. We got these with the new H-125s from our sergeant. So I just thought I'd kind of show off some of the nice stuff that we've been given here, and I have to stay hydrated because we're actually at the hangar today. So I figured
okay.
Good. I didn't want to create a bad name, and
no, that tumbler's cool, by the way.
I know you can't see what's in it, but trust me, it's water. I promise.
Got it, Ian. John, I know you're not feeling well.
No, I'm not feeling great, but so I've got two. I've got some mint tea to help me get through this, and then I've got I brought the bottle because I knew I'd forget. Whistle Pig Piggyback, and you can see it's almost empty. So, but it's the Piggyback. It's a aged 6-year bourbon whiskey.
Nice. You didn't start that bottle this morning, did you?
I read somewhere that whiskey helps, so I figured that applied to colds as well. So that's what I've got going.
Good. Well, I'm actually having something unique today that my son just turned me on to. Some Liquid Death. Liquid Death is like it's actually started as a water company, but this is their armless Palmer, and it's like an Arnold Palmer, and it's really good. He turned me onto it over Thanksgiving when we were visiting, and so I just bought a few today, and so I got my Liquid Death armless Palmer going.
So, are there spirits in there? Or is it?
No. It's actually pretty good for you. It's low sugar, and they're really, the company's really aware of not using plastic. They go all aluminum and for recycling and stuff. And it's an LA company, but they use water out of Austria. But it's really good. It's like a mild Arnold Palmer, and I like it. So,
well, cheers, boys.
Yeah, cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
And then we'll go to the man with the whiskey. You'll give us some hot seats.
Ian, that was only a $7 million tumbler you got there, yeah?
That was a what?
$7 million tumbler you got there?
Well, yeah. No, it's an aftermarket, John. So
well, the question is, did you guys get a cup holder installed for those things?
Yeah, that was aftermarket too.
Okay.
We fabricate all our own over here.
I like it. Well, yeah, you guys know, as you listen to the Hangar Z podcast, the hot seat always follows drink of the day, or typically does. And this episode's no different. But on the heels of the interview we did with LAPD Manny Dickerson, Jack wants to ask the first question. So this is a reference to that interview if you guys have heard it. But Jack, I'll let you take the first question.
Okay, the first question, because we learned so much about Manny on that podcast, is if you a preference in music here from 80s music, Boy George or Duran Duran? Which do you prefer?
Do we get any other option?
No. Boy George or Duran Duran?
Probably Duran Duran for
All
me.
right, Doug. Good. Ian?
It'd be Duran Duran. Yeah.
Good. We can continue this podcast, John.
Yeah.
Had they given the other answer,
Let's put that behind us.
we were going to cut this really short.
We love you, Manny. Yeah.
We love you, Manny. We really do. We
Oh,
just are
man.
very concerned about you that you talked about Boy George on a podcast. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so I feel like 80s music is probably something we all listen to at some point and still do. I love 80s music. But the next question has nothing to do with music at all. One of the things y'all know I hate is folding clothes, folding things in general. So I felt like this was kind of a fitting question for the podcast. This is by far the worst thing to fold on the face of the earth. Can you guys fold a fitted sheet by yourself? And Ian, we'll start with you.
That's a great question. Actually, yes. I got in trouble one time, and it was actually at a friend's house, and his mom said, as part of our punishment, I honestly can't remember what we got in trouble for, but that we had to learn how to fold a fitted sheet. And she showed us, and we couldn't leave the house until we figured it out. And it's kind of a weird story, but it's funny you bring that up because I don't
You
take
didn't see
pride
that
in
one
that
coming,
though.
John.
No,
you did not see that
at all.
coming right there. That's really good,
Yeah.
Ian.
You could go on America's
Yeah.
Got Talent with that. That's crazy.
I tell you, that's something. Like I said, it's funny you ask that question because every time I fold a fitted sheet, I sit back and I think about that day. It's like a form of trauma,
That's awesome.
That was a proper life lesson. That's cool.
Yeah.
Doug, how about you?
I was just going to say I can fold it, but it won't look pretty.
Yeah. I just typically ball it up and throw it somewhere. My wife's good at doing it, but I'm not doing it. Absolutely not. Jack?
I don't even know what a fitted sheet is, John. So, I don't know. I can
That's a good
sleep
answer.
anywhere on anything.
Okay. Well, the last question, we've all worked patrol and been in the field, and you see the weirdest things in the field. Some funny things, some really gross things. I tend to like the funny things. So this question is kind of along those lines. What's the weirdest thing you've seen inside of a home on a radio call? Doug, we'll go back to you.
The first thing that pops in my head was at a hoarder's house, and it was filled with probably 50 cats and just a mound of litter and, urine-soaked sheets. And I mean, they lived everywhere. It smelled so bad. We had to suit up just to get inside there. That's like just the first thing that popped to my head.
Yeah. I think probably hoarders' homes were the worst to go into. All the little deer paths you got to take it to get to the different rooms, and the worst is you got to carry somebody out. That's wider than the deer path. You're dragging trash out with them as you pull them out. Ian, how about you?
I remember it vividly. So we couldn't actually get into the house. It was a hoarder's house, and it was a check welfare. We started looking around the backyard. He had these station wagons, and they were literally packed with old telephones. And then he had pallets of old car batteries that were stacked in the backyard. And that just stuck with me. I'm like, I mean, this guy literally had, I think it was like 3 or 4 station wagons, and the whole interior was packed with old telephones. And I thought that was the most bizarre thing. So that was one of the weirdest things came across. We didn't make it in the house because we actually found out that he was out of the state with his family members, so we didn't have to check on him.
That's a super unique thing to collect. And it's funny because I feel like most kids these days, at least my kids and younger, would look at that and be like, what is this? It's a regular phone.
Yeah.
It's not a
especially
cell
the rotary.
phone. Yeah. It's an antique at this point. The guy was sitting on a pile of money, didn't know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was going to tell you, John, on mine, it was actually up in your neighborhood in the Lake Arrowhead area. And the lady didn't want to leave. After we suited up, we literally had to force her out so the county could come in and do their thing.
Yeah, that's gross. The hoarders homes are something else. That show that was on TV, I don't remember the name of it now, but it was about hoarders. And you're like, man, every single episode you can identify because you've been in a house like that it's pretty gross. But for me, it's the same. Doug, I have the same story as you. Went into a home. It was actually an unoccupied home, but the person had moved out, left. It was about 4 feet high of dog poop inside the house, and they're little dogs. So, those dogs have been doing their business for a long time inside the house. And it, like you said, it smelled really bad. Code enforcement, I think, had asked us to go out to the house with them because it had been broken into and boarded up and broken into. I'm like, I don't think anybody's going to take anything out of this house. It's pretty bad. So, yeah. Jack, how about you?
Duran. I just wanted to get that on the record. I'm with you guys. I'm with the thing that popped into my mind was hoarder, and I saw multiple houses, but the one that was really just interesting, maybe not odd, but interesting, was it was all newspapers. I mean, newspapers from floor to ceiling, to where you were walking through a room where your shoulders are rubbing these newspapers, and it's filling these rooms. It was all newspapers, some magazines probably too, and some of them were very, very old, where they're falling apart. I mean, but it was bizarre, and it was a canine search, by the way, which was really odd. But I remember that one.
Yeah, that's wild. It's funny because that's another thing. Newspapers aren't really a thing anymore. So now that newspapers are gone, what do people put in that place?
Yeah. Now they're collector's items, and that's probably worth $1 million.
Yeah, you take all those newspapers and those telephones that Ian found and get those on eBay.
Exactly. Probably worth a lot of money.
Well, gentlemen, that's the hot seat. Thank you for playing with us. Yeah, it's always fun. I like the randomness that comes out of that. Not too many talk shows, podcasts you hear about cat feces and dog feces and old telephones and newspapers as part of the show. So that's where we're at. So
for those of you that are staying with us after that, it's gonna get a lot more interesting.
It doesn't get any better though,
and less gross.
I'm sorry, I started it. I should.
No, that's okay. John asked you the question. He knew what he was getting into.
Yeah, I knew something was going to come out of that.
So let's kick into gear, and let's learn about the two of you. You're each going to answer this, and just but we want you to introduce yourselves, and then tell us where you grew up and what agency you work for and your current assignment. And we're going to go into more detail of career stuff too. So just kind of an overview of where you grew up and where you ended up right now. Ian, you want to start?
Yeah. So my name is Ian Crocker. I grew up in Redlands, California. I don't get out much, obviously. I still live in Redlands, so I don't venture out very much. But I work for Riverside Police Department. Same as everybody, started out patrol. Worked a few special assignments, including SRO. Did collateral sniper team for a while, and then came out of the SRO assignment as an FTO, and then I ended up out here in aviation. So I'm currently a police pilot here at the Air Sport Unit since mid 2020, and so pretty new out here. And I tell you, it's best gig in the department.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
I think I missed you by just a couple years. So I went to aviation in Ontario in 2012, 2013. And then I guess from 2019 on, we would have flown together, but I think you were in flight school for a decent portion of that. Long story short, didn't really get a chance to work with you a whole lot. Did you work with Jeff at all? Did you know Jeff?
Jeff, I went on one flight with Jeff, and he kind of gave me the quick and dirty tutorial on the Night Sun and how to use it, how not to use it. I learned how to mess it up pretty bad. And but yeah, I got to fly with Jeff. He was out here for a short period while I was volunteering out here just to get my foot in the door. That was probably like 2019, around that time.
I think the Riverside PD Geiger counter's back on.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah. I hear a little bit of that tone there. We've got tone.
I'm sure it'll turn off magically somewhere else.
Yeah. Doug, where'd you grow up at, and where you end up at now?
So I grew up in Rialto, and joined the Sheriff's Department in about 98, actually. 2001 was my academy year, and did a couple years in the jails. I did about 8 years on patrol, and then got into the aviation unit, and I've been there since.
Good. We're going to get into more detail of both your aviation, the aviation side of your departments and you and what you did. But Doug, we're each going to get a shot at giving us some more insight here. Doug, talk about your dad. Fill our audience in on your dad and his aviation career and how that influenced you.
Thanks to our sponsor, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions.
Yeah, that brings a smile on my face when you say that, because, anytime somebody asks me about him, I love to talk about him. He was my hero, pretty much, to say. I loved everything about the guy. He was the guy, you thought that he knew everything, could answer any question you had, was a great dad, and hard worker. He started out in Vietnam, did 2 tours there, flying Hueys, the Slick. And after Vietnam, he came back and applied with the Sheriff's Department for San Bernardino County and worked his way into patrol and aviation. And I think he ended up with 32 years of service.
Wow.
So he's got some great stories he passed down to me, and just his time there. I just grew up loving helicopters, and his love for it, I think, is now going through me.
Yeah. So, and did that happen early on where you were looking at your dad and what he did and where you had that aviation bug early from him?
Yes, early on. So he even moved us close to the Rialto airport, when it was still standing. So anytime helicopters would fly by, I'd run outside and just have to watch it or wave at it. But when I wasn't in school, or if I got out early, he'd let me come over to the hangar with him, hang out, do my homework in there if I had any. And every time, those helicopters took off, I'd be out rushing, looking out the window and looking at them.
That's cool. So cool. So
yeah.
Cool.
I've known you for quite a while, Doug, and you've posted all kinds of inspirational stuff when it comes to your dad. It's been really cool seeing that, and again, seeing the legacy he left behind through you. And you've continued that tradition in your family. It's really cool to see you and how far you've come in your career. I remember, and I don't even know if you remember this, but I think I've asked you before. When you were a deputy on the mountain, my wife was teaching at the high school at the time, and you were I don't know if you weren't an SRO, but you were at the school acting in the capacity of SRO for some reason, and you had to deal with one of my wife's bad kids. She taught at the academy, which is like, I don't know what you call it, a secondary school at the time for kids that had gotten kicked out of the primary school.
The continuation school.
Yeah. Yep. So you had, I think that was the first time I met you, and that was, gosh, probably back in. Were you assigned to the mountaintop like 2010 ish?
2003 to about 2010.
Somewhere around there. I'd run into you up there, and then ever since, in aviation, been, again, everyone knows Doug Brimmer, so I feel like our paths have crossed a lot. So yeah,
I was gonna say back to the passing down or legacy, would you? But I was thinking, hey, I'll pass this down to my kids as well. Well, I ended up with 3 girls, and they absolutely don't want to have anything to do with
it. Do you remember as a kid getting to go on flights with your dad with the Sheriff's Department?
I do.
Yeah.
I was far back as they were in the model 500 Cs. Yeah, so he took me up quite a few times. My birthday, what do you want to do? I want to go for a flight. He would take me up.
It's cool.
So it's great. Yeah.
My 2 kids both have been up multiple times, and they're now adult kids, and I have 5 grandkids. They still talk about that and how it just impacted them. And they remember specific calls. I mean, where they said, do you remember we had kids on the roof? There was a school and there was kids on the rooftop and they were running. I'm like, no, I don't remember any of that, but it impacted them just like I'm sure it impacted you. And it's really cool that it was your dad at the controls, and even more of an impact. I love that. I just love that. That's great.
I got an opportunity to take my wife and my 2 kids on a flight for my son's 10th birthday, which is really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
And as we're closing the flight out, we went over Upland PD. They're on a felony stop for a stolen vehicle. It was all pretty much done at that point, but we flew overhead, and our TFO gave my son the light controller. So Ian, like you, I'm like, hey, hold the light over the car. He actually did pretty good, and he's a video game kid, so he's all about it. But I think that's one of those things, that you're talking about. He'll remember doing that forever, and it was pretty neat. So,
Ian, you had a very interesting path to law enforcement. Talk about some of the things that you did while you were in college, the jobs that you had while you were paying your way through college, and how that prepared you for where you ended up.
Yeah, it's if you were to ask me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if this is where I'd be, I'd have laughed at you. I graduated high school in 99 from Redlands, and I always wanted to be a cop, but I figured, obviously I was too young. I figured I'd get given some advice. Hey, just go to school, get your general eds, think about it. So I did. Well, I got stuck in school for a while. I went to community college, started looking at learning foreign languages and all that stuff and getting my general eds, and transferred over to Cal State. During that time, I worked every job I could get my hands on, especially through Cal State. I was a short order cook, dishwasher, custodian, mostly night jobs because that's the only time I could work. During the day, I was either also working or at school. But I took a path where I always felt like hard work paid off. So that's what I did. That's all I knew. Gosh, I even threw newspapers. You name it. If you think of a job, I've probably done it. I was a cashier at a gas station during the graveyard. We didn't get robbed while I was there. So,
wow.
But I did. I got fired from that job. They found out I was doing my homework while I was working, and I wasn't paying attention. So they have a lot of cameras at gas stations, apparently. No. But yeah, and then so I worked my way through Cal State, San Bernardino, got my bachelor's degree. I ended up transferring over there. And I was like, hey, what's the quickest way I can get out of here? Because I'm kind of tired of school. And people laugh at me, but I'm like, I'll go to be a teacher. And I was working at a special ed program in San Bernardino at the time as a special ed aide. And that program was pretty unique. They were an 18 bed facility for kids. They were like ages 10 through 17. And then they had an adult facility locked down next door. And these kids were mostly like a ward of the state. They needed some serious help, mostly for mental health. That kind of took my interest for a while. I kind of took that path for it would have been 12 years. From 2000 to about 2012, I did that. It was amazing work. I worked with some colleagues there that we got to open up another program out in Mentone, right on the border of Mentone and Redlands, providing day treatment for some of the kids there. We took in kids all ages on up to adults, 22, and helped them try to get them stable. Some of them were out of state at some of the lockdown facilities up in like Utah. And we transitioned them back to their either a family member or foster care, try to get them some stability and get them some job skills, some independent living skills. And so that kind of led into, I became a mental health specialist, helping counsel some of these kids and providing like in-home services. And along the way, I kind of developed a relationship with some law enforcement through San Bernardino County sheriffs and some other agencies. And they always asked me like, hey, you should consider, going into this. And I kind of, I always wanted to, but it just seemed like a big uphill battle. And I was already kind of done with uphill battles. But eventually I worked up the courage, said, hey, I had a decent career at the time, but I wanted to go in the academy. I found the extended academy over at Valley College. I was like, I'll just give it a shot and just throw both feet in and see how I do. And it was a year program. I got through it, got my post, and then I started throwing out applications, and Riverside picked me up in 2013, October. Yeah.
Outstanding. That's rewarding work. I'm sure it was difficult and challenging, and it wasn't all successes, I'm sure, with what you were doing, but it certainly, I'm sure, was rewarding at times when you had those successes.
Absolutely.
And certainly prepared you to be a street cop.
Yes.
Wow.
It just taught me to kind of slow things down and really talk to people a little more instead of just, sometimes we go to these calls and it's just like, hey, let's just get in and out, let's handle this and be done. And I guess I was kind of the guy that would sit back and if it was worth having another 5 or 10 minute conversation with somebody just to kind of put them at bay, or maybe offer them some info to pass along and make things better for them. It was that much easier on the next cop that had to go out there or maybe not had to go out there.
Right.
So so that's kind of what I think, I hope I brought to the table. I don't know. We'll see.
No, I'm sure you did. It's funny, John, common theme, huh? We talk about this over and over. One of our favorite episodes was with Jimmy Hatch, who was suicidal, wanted to die at the hands of police, Navy SEAL that was severely injured. And he talked about the 2 cops that showed up at his house and how he wanted to die. And he said, I'll paraphrase, and then 2 really professional cops show up and screwed up his plans. And they changed his life. And sometimes John and I talk about it offline all the time. We talk about it with different guests. Sometimes all of us in law enforcement, forget the impact that we have on people when we're talking to them, even at the most insignificant calls. You taking the extra few minutes, like you just talked about, I guarantee you that impacted so many people, and you just don't even know about them. It's a really cool thing about our job, and I know John and I we're hot on that, on expanding that every chance we get to talk about that, because I think younger officers sometimes don't feel that in our current climate. But you do. Every contact you have an impact. It's not always positive, but sometimes it's very positive. So I'd love that you said that, Ian. That's really, really cool.
I think we go on so many of those calls to become a nuisance in a lot of ways. And you're just looking, how do I get out of this call? How do I solve this problem? How do I go on to the next thing that I want to do? But, I think about my early days in law enforcement and in the academy, I had no idea how much my career would be wrapped around dealing with mentally ill people and people that were suicidal and the impact that we have in their life. And even I think probably working patrol, I didn't realize, because you don't get the feedback. You don't see their life develop as you go and hear some of the positive feedback of, like, you changed my life and this is how. But now that we're on the other side of this, we can look back. Jimmy Hatch is a good example of how positive policing, good police work changed his life, and have changed the lives of literally, I'm gonna say hundreds of thousands of people based on the book that he wrote, the speaking that he does, and the work he's doing through Spikes. Like, it's amazing. So the fact that Ian, you had that background knowledge and then you applied it in the field, undoubtedly changed and is changing lives still, which is really neat to think, so that's really cool.
And John, just to add to that, we learn even as, TFOs that criminals often take the path of least resistance. And I think that as cops, sometimes we lean on that as well sometimes. And it's a fault that we kind of all need to get past. Sometimes we have to take that long road and help someone out. And I say that sincerely, because, if you can empathize with people that maybe you've been through something similar, I always vouch for the fact that I can never say that I've walked in someone else's shoes, because there's no way that you can relate to somebody 100%. But you try to listen and relate. And that little moment of listening goes a long way with people. Even if you're trying to close a case, or, it could be in any given circumstance. But I think sometimes we're at fault for taking the path of least resistance and trying to, hey, let's wrap this up. Let's get out of here. Let's go to the next one. And that's something I think we all try to work on in our careers and get better at. So,
Doug, I know that you, with your experience, you have something to add here. Go ahead.
I was going to say, along with Ian, I was an SRO as well. And I would say I had more suicide attempt calls at the schools than I did on patrol. And sometimes it just takes, just taking that extra time to talk to that kid. You got some guys that they just want to get to that next call, whether the party or not. But you take that extra time, you really can make a difference, even if you don't think so. There have been calls where I wondered to myself, hey, did I really hit that kid with my words? Did I really make a difference? And next thing you know, you've got a letter from the family thanking, and then the letter from the kid thanking you how much you helped them. So that always felt good.
That is great. This is so good to talk about, and more importantly, so good for the young officers that tune into the podcast can hear that from a lot of experience. And it's more, I think, I deal with recruits a lot here in Oregon at the Academy. I think it's more important now than ever before. The volume of calls that involve mental illness now is at an all-time high. And they're getting training in it. I mean, they are. There's a lot of scenario training, but you can't, even scenarios can only prepare you so much. And so it's good that they're hearing this theme from all of us, that you need to take that extra time. You need to use your words and learn how to communicate and learn how to be, how to have empathy without letting your guard down. It's possible to do that, but sometimes they don't realize it, especially in the beginning. So I'm glad that this came up again. And I'm not surprised when I saw your background, Ian. I thought, oh, this is going to come up for sure because of what you did leading up to this.
The backbone of what we do is TFOs and later as pilots is communicate. If you can't communicate, you can't do the job. So a lot of folks ask, what can I do to make myself a good candidate to go to air support? And I think the best advice I've heard someone say is be good at the job you're doing now. And a lot of the jobs that people are doing now when they're asking that question is patrol. So how do you become a good patrol officer? And it's by what you guys have done, what Jack mentioned. Take the extra 5 minutes, do the extra, take some time to make an impact on people's lives. Then you become good at what you're doing. And then you're a good candidate for the next thing. And in my mind, that's what makes somebody a good candidate for whether it's air support or whatever the assignment is. But for our world, it's air support, and just do the job you're doing now well. And again, mental health is a big part of that. So yeah, it's not going away.
Good topic. Let's shift gears though. And I'm going to go to both of you. Doug, I'll start with you. Can kind of give us we're going to dig into it in more detail as we go along here, but let's talk about the Loma Linda Children's Fly-In and tell us from your perspective, Doug, what is it and how are you guys involved at San Bernardino County?
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
Well, I'll start off by saying that is one of my most favorite events. I would say I have two favorites, and that's definitely one of them at the top. I have to give credit to Ian because he does all the bread and butter he'll be able to talk about, but we actually provide basically just a spot for them to everybody come in and land, drop your vehicles off, come in and get to know everybody, network. And, we set everything up. We'll set the tables up in our hangar. I believe it first started though, and I don't know the year, maybe Ian knows, it first started just landing at the airport because we didn't have a facility there. And a lot of police departments don't, where you can land 12 to 15 helicopters and get that size of group together. So once our building was finished about 5 years ago, we invited them to use our facility. So we did that. We have plenty of room, and we just set up the tables and chairs, help gather donations of toys for the kids. From there, basically, we all gather. We have a briefing, an introduction, and some food and everything. And then once we take off and go to the hospital, the helicopters land on the front lawn of the hospital. They bring the kids out, the sick kids that both can come out of the hospital, and the ones that can't, we'll go inside. We'll take toys in there that were donated. We'll hand it out to all the sick kids, and it's a great event. If you've never been a part of it, you should, because it's very touching, moving. You get there's so many people that thank you. It's unbelievable. And then when you're inside that hospital visiting those kids, you light up their day. I mean, they just, the biggest smile on their face before you even bring a toy in. Just you being an officer coming to visit them, they love it. They enjoy it. And I love doing it every year.
Ian, what's your role in this and in the fly-in?
So Ian usually gets a hold of me.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little chaos. It's like organized chaos, they say. I'll kind of back up because there's a story behind this. I got to give credit to Mike Dillon, one of our pilots. He moved out of state. He kind of took it on for a few years before I got my hands on the program. And Mike, when he transitioned out of here, and I reached out to him because we had COVID for 2020, 2021. It was a sensitive time for them to allow us to come back to the hospital and get in close contact with these kids. But once we were able to get that kind of behind us and get everything in place, they reached out and asked us to come back. They reached out to our chief pilot, Chris Taglioni, and said, "Hey, we want you guys back." Chris then turned to me. I was a new pilot at the time, just finished my commercial. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it was like, oh man, this looks like kind of a big deal. And I'd never been a part of it. I was always the patrol guy that stuck back in the city and worked while other guys did this. And so I literally started from the ground up. Because first, when I reached out to Mike, first thing out of his mouth was, "Oh, it's called Dougie." I said, "Dougie? Who's Dougie?" So he kind of filled in the blanks on that. So I called Doug and I said, we had a conversation. And Doug and it was Chad Marlatt at the time at Riverside Sheriff. And Chad since has moved on out of state. But those guys, working with those two, we were able to put this thing back together and get it going again for the 22nd annual where we picked back up. So this thing had been going on since about 2000 is when it started, I think, with Don Minskelin, one of our pilots here. So Don has a rich history of working and getting that program started. And then this is where it ended up. And really, like Doug said, we rely on them just to kind of help coordinate this thing and get it really everyone together in one place so that we can organize and get it really dialed in for the actual fly-in and the caravan of fleet that go from the hangar to the hospital. Some people say, hey, you should see this event at the hospital. You should see the actual line of cars, ARVs, motors, you name it, K9 vehicles going from, I would be willing to bet it starts at the hospital and pretty much ends at the hangar because there's so many. It's awesome to see when you're driving up to a canoe all the way to the hospital and then you're chirping your sirens going into that place. So I kind of got thrown into this as a coordinator role just to put this thing back together and get it going again. And I found myself just really having a lot of fun with this, but just a lot of challenges too that Doug and Chad and now Manny Ramiro over at Arsos have helped me kind of work through. I'm a big guy about keeping things simple, even when things seem a little complicated. So I asked myself at the beginning, how can I make this kind of a simple process? And what is this event really for? And I guess the answer I came up with was that it's really just for the kids. It's good for PR. It's good for agencies to get out there and show what we're capable of and what we can do. But it's really for these kids. These kids are in probably the most difficult time of their lives, fighting every day, and the parents as well. And we have an opportunity to make it that much better, even if it's getting them to crack a smile or what, like Doug said, just them seeing us in uniform. Keeping it simple to me meant let's just bring a ton of toys. Let's bring as many toys as we can. I could care less if guys get fed in the morning. I could care less if, let's just get together. Let's bring a ton of toys. And that's where this all started up again. And to me, I know my kids, and I know if there's anything that makes them happy, as much as they like being around me, which is probably not always the case. It's more like, hey, let's play a game. Let's when you see them get a new toy, that always brings a smile to their face. So that was my goal in all this, is that let's start with the toys and give these kids what they really want. And that's a lot of toys. Yeah, so we did that. Exactly. So we did that. We showed up. I don't know, maybe Doug knows a little better. I think we ended up like that first, last year we ended up with, I think it was like 8 or 9 pallets of toys. This year it was like 10 pallets, plus we had a bunch of donation value. We had a ton of toys. And so I think now that I've conquered that, I actually heard a comment from the hospital staff that we brought too many toys, which I'm okay with. That's not my problem.
Yeah. That's a good problem to have, isn't it? That's a great problem.
Yeah. So now this year I tried something different, and I went ahead and reached out to some of the life coaches and kind of asked them, hey, what do you guys need? Not just giving the kids each individual toys, but like, what do you guys need? And I don't know if you ever worked with any of the life coaches at any hospital, but the children's hospitals have these life coaches that are phenomenal. Not to say, I mean, the doctors and nurses are hands down the best advocates for those kids in terms of their treatment, but they, along with their parents, but these life coaches are the ones that kind of create some stability there in the hospital environment, and they bring books, movies, games, everything. And so we reached out to them this year and kind of asked if we could help with that. I was able to come through with like some Switch games, some video game stuff, but I'm just trying to add a little bit more each year and make it a little bit better each year. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great stuff. Doug, back to you. That one of the reasons that people are probably wondering, well, okay, that's at Riverside, but San Bernardino Hangar is where they're starting from. Tell us about your hangar, Doug. For those of the outside of Southern California, they don't know what that facility is like. We all know. Tell us about your facility at San Bernardino County Sheriff's Aviation.
Well, I'll tell you, Jack, we absolutely love it. And from where we came from at Rialto Airport, it was small. You'd have to shuffle blades to get aircraft in and out. Someone have to stay outside, or actually have to get flown over to another airport just to store it there. So we love it. We actually got the idea from Las Vegas Metro. So, we're talking with Steve Morris and Dave Callan, and a couple of our guys flew up there a couple of times. I went myself, and we absolutely love. Las Vegas actually got a brand new facility as well. And if you haven't seen theirs, I would encourage you to do so. It was just so nice. We loved it, and we asked for the plans, and we did pretty much the same thing. We mirrored Vegas, and there's plenty of room right now for every single one of our aircraft to include helicopters and fixed wing.
Yeah, let's continue on that. Tell us about how many aircraft, Doug, are we talking about that you're up to in San Bernardino, and types?
So aircraft wise, we have 7 A-Stars. We have actually we just sold our last 500 that we use for a patrol, which I'll add was my favorite helicopter to fly. I'm sure Jeff would agree. And we have 3 Hueys. 2 of those are Dermo, and one is a commercial model, Bell 212. The other one's a Super Huey, and the other is a standard H model Huey. So that goes for the helicopters. The airplanes, we have 2 Mahindra Airvans, and those are primarily used for surveillance, and 2 King Airs, which are used for transports and extraditions. And we have an Aero Commander that I think will soon be on the selling block.
Right.
So,
how many? Do you happen to know the square footage of that hangar?
You know what? I don't. I have been told before, and I can't even remember. It's pretty massive.
It is. I mean, you could fit. It's actually like 2 hangars, kind of, right? Connected.
Right.
And you could put 737s in there. I mean, easily, right? I mean, it's amazing how big it is and how much room you have.
I think we're spoiled, to say the least.
Yes, I can relate to that. Let's continue on the agencies. Ian, describe Riverside PD. Give us the overview for our listeners of what Riverside PD is, size wise, area wise, that you cover, a number of personnel that Riverside currently has.
We currently have about 400 sworn officers. We're just like every agency. We're trying to get those numbers up. About 150 to 200 non-sworn. So just folks that are supporting the sworn folks get the job done, whether it be records, admin, people like that just help us get this job done on a day-to-day basis. The city itself, about 81 square miles, which to Doug probably doesn't seem like a lot.
We're going to get to that. But Doug, everything is small in the area where he patrols.
But we cover, we also help being an air unit, we support our peripheral areas. We help out Corona, we help out Riverside, their hangars out of Hemet. There's times when if they're weathered in, or if they're extended, or if they're stuck on a call, we kind of scratch each other's back and help each other out. And, we'll help Harupa, East Vale, Home Gardens, El Cerrito, Lake Matthews. We'll even go to Elsinore. We'll go to Moreno Valley. Wherever there's work, we'll go if we're needed. There's obviously a priority role that takes place, but our city gets priority, but we help out anywhere that we can to make things safer for the guys on the ground. Our department's pretty cool. The one thing that actually encouraged me to work here was I always thought about promotability, which I think most cops should think about. There's a lot that smaller departments offer, but there's a lot that departments like Riverside offer, and like, special assignments, SRO. We have PSET teams that go do outreach and do problem-oriented policing. We have canines. We have bomb techs. We have a little bit of everything. We're just big enough to where promotability in our department is good. Detectives, a lifetime assignment. I mean, things like that. It's really, we have a lot of opportunity in this department that we're competitive with other departments in that respect. So we're good size, and I have an appreciation for that. Our air support unit currently, we're at 6 pilots and a TFO. We're working on getting one more TFO, which will put us at 8 total. The TFO assignments are out here. They're not lifetime assignments. It can be tough because it's a 3-year, and then sometimes they can add to that. But it's tough. You get TFO skills just dialed in, and then they set it back. So it's kind of a challenge. But we have 6 pilots, which is good. Correction 5. We're almost at 6, and then. We're like I said, we're just big enough to where we can run 4 crews. There is some overtime built in there. I like it here. It's a good city to work for.
And all the pilots can work as TFOs?
Yes. Yeah. So by design, once we're fully staffed, we'll have two pilot crews, and then we'll have 2 crews with a pilot TFO.
Gotcha.
The most important question, this would come from Jeff, is how on earth do you work with Steve Quinn?
Steve, Steve, I tell you, Steve's a funny guy, man. He's like, people give him a hard time, but he kind of keeps us all, he keeps you laughing. He's got such a great sense of humor. I tell you, I have an appreciation. Everyone in this unit, I think, and John, you probably appreciate this as well. Everyone, being in an air unit, there's got to be a good culture of guys. We know each other's families. We have to be able to get along, and if we don't, we have to be able to address that and move on. And working with guys like Steve, he makes it easy. We get to give each other, we give each other a hard time all the time, but we have a good sense of humor about it, and we get the job done. So, Steve, he's a character, man. You got to love him.
Yeah, I think it's important to have at least one person in your unit that takes the edge off things.
Yes.
We all tend to take ourselves really serious, and in the middle of this really serious conversation, you've got to have one person who can take that and throw it off kilter. Kevin Hart was that for my agency. He was the funniest guy I ever worked with, and one of my best friends to date. He now works with Jeff again in Tennessee, oddly enough. So we'd be flying along and be some super critical incident, and we'd be done, and all of a sudden look over, and I'm on that particular night I'd be at the PIC, and he'd be a TFO, and his boots would be off, and his feet with socks would be sitting on top of the monitor. I'm like, what are you doing? He's just a funny dude, but it's great to have people like
Steve's
that.
full of he's full of the one-liners that'll catch you off guard. So
Are they dad jokes, or are they good jokes?
No, they're good. I'll tell you, we just we were out working, we were flying earlier, and we caught a flock on it. It was a stolen on a flock camera, and Chris was flying in the back, and he picked it up, and Steve gets on it, and Chris asked what he goes, what song do you want? Steve didn't miss a beat. He said Kenny Loggins. What music you want for this one, Steve? Kenny Loggins. So,
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, Steve's a
Gotta
great
stay
guy.
in the danger zone, John.
I like Steve. Sorry to derail the conversation, Jack.
No,
Just
it
had to
didn't derail
throw
it
that
at
in
all.
there.
Everybody's got a Steve, right?
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
Doug
think-
is here representing the largest county in the United States of America, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Doug?
That is correct. About
What's the square
20,000 square miles.
20,000 square miles of area. Talk about your department, the size of personnel and anything else you can think of. There's a lot going on there in a department that has to cover that kind of square miles. It's amazing.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Yeah, so we have about, 2,000 sworn employees. We have 1,000 non-sworn. We have, on top of that, probably close to just under 1,000 volunteers. So the Sheriff's Department's really big on volunteers, and they're great. They help out in all aspects, search and rescue, citizens on patrol, explorers. At our division, we have air medics, which are volunteer doctors and nurses from local hospitals. And we have an aviation explorer unit. On a side note, I was one of our explorer advisors. So we take the largest explorer competition, at least on the western half of the U.S., is the Las Vegas ex-con explorer competition. And probably about 40 to 50 agencies, police, sheriff, border patrol, you name it. Their explorers compete in various scenarios, felony car stops, building searches, and you name it. And we actually did really well one year. And it's just funny to see everybody say, aviation. That aviation has an explorer unit. Yeah, you get all these police departments and stuff. So I was real proud of that. We brought home a lot of trophies. I was real proud of our Explorer program there. On top of that, we have Aero Squadron. The Aero Squadron in our division is commercial or just private pilots that can either provide their own plane or just have a pilot's license. And they will help out on search and rescues, ballot runs. County uses us to go out to the outlying stations, Needles, Colorado River, or Trona, and I'm trying to think of the other one, the Barstow area. But anyways, they go out, fly out there, pick up the ballots, bring them back so they can all be counted and whatnot. So tons of volunteers. Going back to our size, I kind of looked it up one time just to be curious. The size of our county, 20,000 square miles, it would probably take us to fly an A-Star from the county line, LA San Bernardino county line, out to the Arizona-Nevada border. Would probably take us to about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. A bag of fuel.
A bit. Yes.
Wow.
You better manage your fuel correctly for sure. And you could fit, I think they said you could fit 9 of the smaller states in our county alone. So it's comprised of both valleys, deserts, high deserts, and mountains to include lakes. So a lot to cover.
What's the highest elevation? I don't mean to put you on the spot, Doug, but do you know the highest elevation?
Yeah, it's actually the highest point in Southern California. It's Mount San Gorgonio, and that stands at 11,500 feet.
Yeah, 11,500. And you've done rescues there?
I sure have. Yes,
yeah.
Hoist rescues.
I mean, that's we're talking serious altitude there, and very that adds an element to your rescue that most aren't used to. That takes a special skill and knowledge and preparation to do that, no doubt. And you don't know when you're going to do that. You got to be ready all the time to do that.
Correct.
Wow. really interesting. That, I mean, when that comes up in conversation at like different events, you know, when they talk about the size of San Bernardino, people just stand there and go, "What?" They're in disbelief when I guarantee you've told people that and they go, "Oh, that's bullshit." You know, that's 20,000 square miles. No, that can't be. But it is, and it's reality. And there's things that happen at every corner of that county.
Right. So when we do get calls like that, if we get a call out to state line, it's kind of like Ian said, we have a good partnership with all our surrounding agencies, and Riverside PD steps in. They'll come help us out if we're not available. Ontario, Fontana. So we build good relationships.
One thing that I know John loves to ask people, and I do too, is we're going to take you back to prior to aviation. All right. What's the funniest incident that you were involved in prior to aviation? Go ahead, Ian. We'll go back to you.
You know, when we were talking about the calls, what's the weirdest thing you saw in a house kind of thing? And I guess it's easy just to go back to the field training days when you first started being a cop. That's where you're going to make all your mistakes and laugh later, you know. And I remember I was working graveyard. I had my FTO, and he was big on, you know, hey, let's you know, you're going to do everything. You know, if it was a DUI TC, you're taking the DUI and the TC, and there's no questions asked. You're just, you know, he was good about teaching me down and dirty how to do things the right way. And we got a call. It was like behind a dentist office, as in most cases, you know, it's like a homeless setting up a camp behind a dentist office. And so we show up, and it's this guy. He's got like 5 hair dryers plugged in under his tent. That's like he's heating up the place. And he's got, I mean, this guy had a really sophisticated way of setting up a tent. He had like bungee cords and clamps and all this stuff. And like, I think his tent has like 3 bedrooms in it. And
it was an estate.
So my FTO turns to me and he goes, "All right, well, let's figure out what's going on." So we run him. He's on like probation and parole. He's like, you know, everything. So we're like, all right, we're going to do a compliance check. Goes, you know, he kind of, hey, get in there. You know, if he's got anything, you know, we're going to check on him. So while he's talking to him, I throw the gloves on. I'm going in there and we're doing our search, and we being me. And this guy has everything you can think of as a homeless person, toasters and you name it. And he's got like shopping carts. Well, I find he's got suitcases, and he had these like ice chests. And I'm like, I don't even want to look. But I'm like looking through, making sure there's nothing crazy. And I open these like, they're like zip up ice chests. And I open them up, and it's 2 of them had probably the largest, it was like male on male DVD porn collection and like sex toys, the whole 9 yards were in this thing. And, just, you know, and so I'm finishing up, and I had a laugh, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna get this done, get out of here. And as I'm kind of backing out of there, another unit had pulled up and was talking to the guy that, you know, was responsible for this camp. And so my FTO turns to me and goes, "Hey, you got anything left to look in? You know, what do you got left?" And I'm like, "Oh, I just haven't checked those chew ice chests right there. Can you just check those for me, and we'll be all set?" And so he walks over and he pops both of them open at the same time, and his back is to me, and he just stands up, and he just stands there for like a 5-second pause, turns around and he's just busting up, and I'm laughing. It was just one of those moments, you know, you have with your FTO. And he looked at me, and I told him, I was like, "Gotcha. Let's go." So that was my
that's good.
Yeah.
Doug, you got something?
Well, it's not as good as Ian's, but I was actually working up in the mountains. That was the first patrol station I went to.
Why is it gotta be the mountains all the
time? What is that, John? Is there something? There's a common
There's
theme.
something going on up there.
Yeah. Our folk are a little different.
Yes, they are definitely a little different. So I'm on training, and we go to this house. I can't remember if it was a domestic or whatever it was. The guy wouldn't come out. We knew he was in the house, so Sergeant says, "Hey, this is some good training for the new boot. Kick the door." I said, "All right, no problem." Now, mind you, I've never kicked the door on duty before. This is my first time. So, you know, the older doors where they have the panel inserts right in the middle. So of course, I wasn't thinking, kick under the doorknob. No, of course, I kicked right into the panel. And half of my leg is in the house. I'm looking at my FTO. He's looking back at me and he's like, pull your foot out. And I'm like, I can't. It's stuck. So as I'm trying to get my foot out, the sergeant's saying, get the ram. So they got the ram. They were careful about ramming it, but we eventually got them. And it reminded me of the Brick Awards. You guys all know what the Brick Awards are?
No.
So for us, every station has their own Christmas party, and we have a Brick Award. So if you did something silly, they would give you a brick, and then they would put whatever you did silly on top of that brick. So on mine, it was a large brick, and they glued like a WWF guy that, mechanical legs. So, and they put it through like a cardboard door glued onto the brick, and everybody had a good laugh at that.
That's cool. So I'm glad I don't know about the Brick Awards. I'd have a collection. Those things. Oh my gosh.
I could show you mine.
Wow. Oh, that's good.
Jack, you guys, LAPD has a really rich tradition of celebrating things. Did you guys celebrate those types of events?
Well, in the 80s, I can tell you, and I tell this story in the class all the time of things that I screwed up. In the 80s, there were cartoon boards. I mean, every station had a board somewhere that was not in public view. And if you screwed up, you were on that board. You were on that board. And I made it to that board a few times. Even in K-9, even in the 90s, there was I thought about this the other day, where there was a board in the K-9 office, and my dog was searching a second story of an abandoned old hardware store, and I saw this small door, and I'm like, this is really odd. This small door. So I put my dog on it down, and I opened the door, and I'm looking at it going, what am I looking at? And what I'm looking at is I'm looking down at the false ceiling. It's the gap between the false ceiling and the roof. So it's wiring and stuff. There's nothing there. I mean, it's about it's a few feet drop to the boards. Well, when I opened that door and peeked, you know what the dog wants to do. He wants to go. And he went in there and fell through the ceiling and down to the ground. I thought he was dead. And I looked down, and he stood up and shook off and kept searching. And it was like, oh my God, I thought I killed him. Well, needless to say, the next day there was a picture of my dog with wings, with the whole song of those interesting men and their flying machines. They go up. Well, it was about Gundo, and about the dog flying through the air and how I almost killed him. And, because it would have been my fault. It really would have been. But so cartoon boards were really big. They weren't bricks, but the cartoon board was very typical.
Yeah.
And there was other stuff here and there, but that was a big one. That lasted
awesome.
a long time. I wish it was still around, because you didn't want to end up there, and you learned if you ended up there once, you went, oh, I'm not going to do that again. And you were hoping somebody else would screw up pretty quick so that you wouldn't be on it anymore. Somebody else would be up there.
There's a cartoonist that I think it's from your agency that draws retirement photos for folks.
Oh yeah.
When they go, is that who did the other stuff?
No, the cartoon boards were strictly, just your peers. They weren't very fancy. Some of them were very crude. But yeah, the guy that does the retirements, he does a good chunk of retirement drawings for your announcement.
Yeah, those are cool.
That's been a tradition for a long time. Yeah, and they customize them. Yeah, I'm looking at mine here in the office. It's big and it's framed and everything, and then you tell them if there's something unique you want on it. Like mine has LAX in the background, like the tower and the arch restaurant, and then it says 24 left. And the reason that's on there is because right after September 11th, we're flying one night in the middle of the night, and there's nothing in the air. I mean, there's 15 aircraft in the entire United States flying, and they're all law enforcement aircraft probably. And I asked LA Tower, said, hey, police 8 request to land approach end of 24 left. And the guy comes on and he goes, approved. And the sheriffs get on and go, because you can. And I landed on the numbers of 24 left at LAX. You can't do that.
No.
I mean, I would have never, ever, ever been able to do that. But for that week or so, no big deal. So 24 left is on mine. So it's kind of unique.
No dog with angel wings?
No. Thankfully. I'm lucky that he survived that. Shifting gears a little bit, Doug, there's something that John and I are anxious to hear more about. You're involved with the San Bernardino Sheriff Museum. Tell us about the museum and your involvement in that.
So I was recently president of the museum. I've been with it since 2008. But basically, our job is to go out and either collect any type of artifacts related to the department. Right now, we're kind of tasked with getting hold of retirees, because a lot of them have stuff that they don't want anymore. It was on the department. We've gotten all kinds of cool things. And we were called the Historical Society, but we kind of changed it to museum because that's what we're looking for in the future. We don't have homes or a home for the museum. So we actually went out to different stations and we started putting displays in their lobbies or their hallways and so forth. So we also have one at headquarters, but we'd like to have a major home. That's definitely on our plan. And hopefully in the near future, we'll move into one. I was able to secure a retired Mercy Air Bell 222. They were retiring that aircraft. I don't even know if any are flying anymore. I don't think they are, but I was actually able to get two. I gave one to our fire department there in San Bernardino, and for that they let us store it at their training facility at the airport. So we've got one there. We've got multiple vehicles from a 1950 Ford to our current one is a Crown Vic that was used in the December 2nd terrorist attacks at the IRC. That got shot up. So, we've got a lot of stuff to display, weapons, you name it. I go out and visit, LAPD's museum, LA counties, and, those are awesome to go see and visit. So hopefully we can get there someday.
That'd be great. What's the most unique item that you're aware of that, I'm sure there's plenty, but from what you're talking about, but what's the most unique item you've come across that impresses you?
Well, this one wasn't directly related to our department, but we made it. It's a 1950 Ford Coupe. They called it the shoebox. And we found it in Tennessee, as a matter of fact. It was in a museum. And for whatever reason, they had to sell the museum and sell all the vehicles inside it. So it only had 20,000 miles on that, the original on that vehicle. So we were able to bring that back to California and turn it into one of our patrol vehicles. The reason it was important to us is because 1950 is the first year our department marked the units with a sheriff's star, the logo.
Yeah.
And 1950 also happened to be the first year Ford put out their police packages.
Nice.
So that one I'm particularly proud of because we went out, got donations to purchase that. So it's a beautiful car for sure.
Was that the one in your hangar when we were there, when I was down there recently for the fly-in?
Yes, the all black one.
Oh, it's immaculate. John and I had a picture taken next to that. It's beautiful. Yeah. It looks like it's right off the showroom floor.
Yeah, I mean, it's practically a brand new car.
Ah, very cool. That's really cool.
You guys have done a really good job of collecting the badges from over the years. And I see the posts in your Facebook group. And that's what's really neat is to see the progression of our badges over the years. You know, in my agency, they've done a coffee cup that has those badges around the coffee cup. But you guys have preserved that really well through what you're doing. Have you guys come up with a poster or some way to kind of graphically display that progression over the years?
That's funny you ask, because I just saw that Riverside Sheriff did that. And I love it. So we're going to do that next. So that's in the works. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how we progress through the years. And a funny thing, the person who got me involved in it before he even was the deputy chief on our department. Jack, you may know him as Keith Bushy, retired LAPD commander.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he got me all involved in that. And yeah, I love the history.
Yeah. It's so important. It is so, so important. As a matter of fact, I thought about it earlier when you were talking, Ian. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but when I first got into law enforcement, which is a long time ago now, the early 80s, Riverside was like the agency in the United States that all the other agencies kind of looked to for tactical stuff. And there's a lot of, like, the street survival books. There's a lot of their photos are Riverside PD guys. Riverside was looked to for tactics as leading the way and being innovative and progressive. And those words might not have been used at the time, but when you look back on them, their tactics were innovative and progressive. And were you aware of that Riverside had that part of the history of the tactical side?
This is the end of part 1 of our conversation with Doug Brimmer and Ian Crocker. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing, a leading manufacturer of trusted special mission avionics for law enforcement, aerial firefighting, and utility operators. Visit www.aem-corp.com and learn how AEM's digital communication and loudspeaker systems, avionics consoles, radios, and specialty audio products can support your most demanding missions. Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Thank you for hanging out to hear from our sponsors. We're another week closer to HAI, and don't forget to join us at the Vertical booth on the Wednesday of HAI for a Vertical Helicast meet and greet from 3 to 5 p.m. Precision Aviation Group is partnering with Vertical to host a beer party during that time as well. Plus, K9 Torque will be there accepting pets and photos. Speaking of Vertical Helicast, don't forget to check out the latest episodes of the Helicopter Podcast and the Real Rescue Podcast. Halsey Scheider of the Helicopter Podcast just released a really interesting episode with Jason Hill, the founder of Hill Helicopters. Jason Quinn from the Real Rescue Podcast just released an episode with Tom Jewell and Rob Winger. Both Tom and Rob are firefighters from Essex County in the UK. For more information, go to verticalhelicast.com. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.